Tonight's big stories. As what many had feared, the Titanic-bound submersible suffered a catastrophic implosion, killing all 5 passengers. We'll examine what went wrong with dive rescue expert Butch Hendricks of Lifeguard Systems later on.
The price of rice is expected to increase once more, even as the Agriculture Department insists there is enough supply in the country.
And is another power grab brewing in the upper chamber? Talks are resurfacing once again that the Senate leadership of Mig-Zubiri is in trouble.
Welcome to the show. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Hall.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Straight off to our top story, consistent with a catastrophic implosion. That is how U.S. Navy officials describe the end to Ocean Gate's Titanic expedition. All 5 passengers of the submersible are now presumed dead. The U.S. Coast Guard confirmed the tragic news, saying debris found by remotely operated vehicles some 1,600 feet from the Titanic's wreck matched that of the Titan submersible. This ends days of a frantic multinational search for the vessel. The U.S. Coast Guard says the families of the passengers were informed of the fate of the submersible even before the press conference happened. But they held out little hope of retrieving the remains of all 5 passengers.
This is an incredibly unforgiving environment down there on the seafloor, and the debris is consistent with a catastrophic implosion of the vessel. And so we'll continue to work and continue to search the area down there.
Let's take a look back at how all of this started. Ocean Gate, the company behind the vessel, has been in the business of underwater tourism and research exploration since 2009. Now, as a business, they banked on the lucrative tourism interest for the Titanic, charging $250,000 or 13.7 million pesos per person to go see the wreckage thousands of feet under the sea. But as reports have pointed out, there have been a couple of red flags in their Titanic tour. Aside from the submersible having no certification from any marine group, its compact design has been heavily questioned if it can indeed handle deep sea pressure. There's also criticism over its control system, which appeared to be similar to a video game console. It was also bolted shut from the outside. Experts also say that even if the vessel did not implode, other scenarios will have proven fatal for its passengers. The Titanic wreckage sits at a depth of 3,800 meters, and at that point, the passengers could already be having trouble with their air supply. For reference, imagine sinking below sea level at a depth that's equal to more than 4 Burj Khalifa towers stacked on top of one another.
Now, here to help us make sense of this tragic incident, we have Butch Hendricks, president and founder of Lifeguard Systems. Lifeguard Systems conducts dive training for public safety officers and has been instructing dive rescues for over 35 years. Butch, welcome to the big story, and I should say good morning where you are.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Thanks for joining us. We actually booked you as a guest days before today's tragic news. Wish
Yes.
the circumstances were different, but it is what it is. Now, I know the U.S. Navy has already said that it's too early to answer the why and the when the sub imploded. But to the best of your knowledge, what could have gone wrong there?
It could have been something as simple as a tiny leak where, as they were descending, a small amount of water was able to find a little pinhole. And once it started, it would have simply caused the process of the unit becoming a little structurally unsafe, and boom, it just crushes.
Right. Butch, reports have it that the submersible lost contact some 12,500 feet below the surface. Now, at that depth, just how much pressure are we talking about, and how would that pressure affect the human body? Would it have been quick?
It would have been, if you said right now that someone dropped something behind you and you went, "What was that?" You would have never finished saying the W portion of what? It would have been almost instantaneous. It happened so fast. It would be, what was that noise? You'd never finish thinking, what was that noise? And it's over.
So at least we could take some comfort in the fact that it would have been at least painless, or they don't know what hit them.
This would have been painless. According to the experts that I've spoken to about the implosion, it's like a flash fire. It's so fast, it happens, it's over, and you never knew it was coming.
Well, Butch, this is the third expedition, I believe, of the Titan. Could it have been also because of the first two and then now the third, that it wasn't able to withstand that kind of pressure because it had already its successful runs in the past? Your thoughts on that?
Yes, it's had a couple of successful runs. It could have been something as simple as in the seal, as you mentioned earlier, the door. There's only one way in, one way out, and that door is sealed from the outside. It could have been a simple leak, a piece of sand that no one noticed. It doesn't take much to cause a problem. Could have been the fact that the unit has just been weak and it wasn't checked properly.
So I guess, to be blunt, the hard question there is, should it have been allowed to operate, especially in light of the fact that the CEO, Stockton Rush, had apparently downplayed some safety concerns in previous years, and of course it did not have the right certification.
Well, apparently it did not need the certification, but the fact that it was not certified certainly would have set you in a mindset of, why am I doing this? And as a passenger, for sure, there's a lot of little pieces that you have to wonder, where is the safety side? Not having an emergency beacon, not having proper communication. There's a lot of questions to what are we doing here, going 12,000 feet below the sea.
Right. Butch, going back to what I asked you earlier, so you mentioned that this would have happened like before we could even formulate a complete thought. Having said that, can we expect some sort of retrieval in terms of the bodies, or in the context of the bodies? Should we expect that anything can still be recovered at this point?
Sorry. I'm not sure what can be recovered or not. Depending on the materials that were inside of the submarine when it collapsed, could make a difference in physically what would be left in the process of human bodies.
Well, Butch, I was looking at social media and I saw a tweet that said this was the only submersible that has traveled that deep. Is it true that we don't have any other examples or technology available? And do you think that the Titanic wreckage is fit for tourism as it is?
There are several other submersibles, as I understand it, that have been to the Titanic. The Russians have one that a couple of different individuals have described, and this is not the only one that has ever been there. This is one that is selling tours, so to speak. So let's go for a boat ride. And again, the interesting part is that there have been a couple of difficulties in the past where different units have had minor entanglement problems, current difficulties. This is the only one that's ever imploded. And as you see on your screen, you can see a couple of different units that are being brought down to the Titanic.
What do you think it is fit for tourism? This kind of expedition?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How do you think it's fit for tourism? Should any of this kind happen again in the future?
I think the concern I have is now we're going to see more people looking to build submersibles that can take you to the Titanic or even deeper, and that it's going to become the next challenge, like flying, right? If the Wright brothers hadn't gone flying, we wouldn't be flying. I think that today, the next thing is going to be build a better unit and take people on tours. Only thing that's going to be different is instead of $250,000, it will probably be $400,000.
All right, Butch, one question. If there would be one big lesson that we could all learn from this experience, this debacle, what would it be, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it would be not allow a vessel like this to go to the bottom and carry passengers without proper certification, without having been checked by an outside agency like the FAA for airplanes. Have a checklist that we could give. If you were going to be going on that ride, let's have a checklist that you can download from the internet, and you can ask them a series of questions. It says it's safe enough for you to go, rather than, okay, you're signing waivers saying you're not going to sue them, but they're not giving you anything that says, here, this is what we've done to protect you.
You think there's eventually going to be a market for this, deep sea tourism? I mean, my co-anchors and I were debating this the other day. Why would someone willingly pay $250,000 to put their lives on the line, right? So I don't know, what's the psychology here? Talk to us. You've done a lot of training, deep sea training rescues, right? Rescue trainings, rather. So why do people do this?
Well, they do it because it's exciting, and it's because almost no one else can. So you get to go out and do something very exciting.
If it wasn't dangerous, it wouldn't be appealing, right?
That's true.
Yes, but very often, if you take at least one or two of the individuals who were in that submersible, they're adventurers, and they realize when you become an adventurer, you realize that you can die tomorrow. So you accept death when you can't do some of what we do in the world.
Is anybody going to be held liable? I mean, there was a waiver that they signed accepting death. Is the company or anybody going to be held liable for those 5 lives?
When you say it's liable, the liable could be our United States government. The Canadian government could end up looking at this and saying, yes, somebody's liable for this. But as far as the individuals who were in the unit, who paid to be there, they signed waivers saying they would not sue, and it would be okay if they died.
And that
or
holds.
something
That
went
holds
wrong.
in court.
So there's no recourse for the family in that avenue. But certainly someone has to pay for what it costs to do this recovery.
Well, here's hoping this is the last of such stories that we'll be reporting. Thanks so much for joining us tonight and this morning, your time. Lifeguard Systems President and Founder Butch Hendrick.
Thank you.
Right, so it actually happened. I remember seeing it break on Twitter last weekend. It was very late at night, and I had no idea like what the scale of this whole thing actually entailed.
And I think it's gone viral because of how confounding it is. Like the question,
Exactly.
why would a rich
Exactly.
person go on this kind of trip?
I'm not
Also,
laughing
right?
at their misfortune, by the way. It's
because
just
we're not billionaires.
Exactly.
Right?
And we can't put ourselves in their shoes. I don't have
But social
$250,000.
media definitely was filled with opinions and memes about what happened. Many making a reference to the Titanic film, making light of the situation, the fact that it was controlled with a video game controller. Some described it as a misadventure.
Right, some even making the connections, like the wife of Stockton Rush apparently being the descendant of 2 first-class passengers
Correct,
on the
yeah.
Titanic. And of course, there's also this eat the rich sentiment that's going around.
Parang sa triangle of sadness, di ba?
Right.
Oo.
One user tweeted that the Ocean Gate implosion near the site of the Titanic wreck is almost too perfect of an escapulation of the insanity of billionaire culture. It is like a Succession spin-off where one of the Roys goes on a deep sea expedition. Another viral tweet goes, dying in an ocean as deep as your pockets, in a vessel as tiny as the shanty houses you turned your noses up at.
Some, though, argued that these discussions reveal the vile nature of social media. A Twitter user said 2 of the people on the Titanic submarine are a father and his teenage son. His wife and daughter are back home, absolutely terrified. Now, sorry to be a buzzkill, guys, but maybe we shouldn't joke about this or make fun of the people for how they spent their money, because they are humans after all. Another one tweeted the speed at which everyone started posting jokes about the people in the missing submarine is maybe kind of wild. Medyo absurd talaga, but we have a lot of lessons to take away from this.
Pero tama ka rin eh. You were saying like last night when we were talking about this whole issue, people have done it before. They came back up unscathed. There was a team that got stuck in the propeller, in the bow of the Titanic.
That's enough to convince you to do it again, right? To take on the risk. See, we all know that there's a level of risk, but now we know and we are reminded to actually do our research, right?
But going back to the Titanic, which I remember, I was like 15 years old when that went on air or to the movies. And James Cameron must have done some research in the 90s, like 30 plus years ago.
Well, he is an avid diver himself,
Yes.
right? He built his own sub called the
submersible.
Deep Sea Challenger. That's right. Speaking of the director, James Cameron also weighed in. Let's hear his thoughts about this incident.
It's just tragic and it's horrific and it's unnecessary. It's not lost on me as somebody who's studied the meaning of Titanic. It's greater meaning to us, historically and societally, that it's about warnings that were ignored. The captain was warned, there were icebergs ahead, it was a moonless night, and he plowed ahead for whatever reason. I think there was some greed, there was some glory in it, and here we are again, and at the same place. Now there's one wreck lying next to the other wreck for the same damn reason.
Now, Regina mentioned this earlier, that social media users also managed to unearth an interview of OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush from 2021, where he admitted that his Titan submersible had broken some rules. Let's listen to that.
I'd like to be remembered as an innovator. I think it was General MacArthur said, "You're remembered for the rules you break." And I've broken some rules to make this. I think I've broken them with logic and good engineering behind me. The carbon fiber and titanium, there's a rule you don't do that. Well, I did.
Up next, as the 19th Congress nears the one-year mark, is there change in leadership brewing in the Senate? We'll find out when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching the big story here on One News. Nearly a year since the 19th Congress began, rumors are flying once more that Senate President Mig Zubiri may be replaced. But Senate President pro tempore Loren Legarda was quick to dispel them. Senator Legarda said there are no talks and that there will be no change as they are in full support of the Senate President. Legarda also praised Zubiri, dubbing him the deserving trabajador ng Senado. She said she also appreciated Zubiri's good working relations with both the Senate majority and minority blocs. Since he assumed the office of the Senate President, rumors have been swirling of attempts to oust Zubiri. Zubiri previously said that the allegations of a coup against him were sparked by his unyielding attitude on the proposed amendment to the Economic Charter. Now, despite pressure from the House and his fellow senators, Zubiri firmly said Chacha was not a priority legislation.
Why would you fix something that's not broken? Yeah. Ano yung saying? Why fix something if it ain't broke? He's really bagay sa kanyang slogan, trabahador ng Senado. He has good working relations with the majority and the minority as well, and we give value to the minority leader. Hindi madali, maski dalawa lang sila.
Senator Legarda also gave her assessment of the president's first year in office. We have the details with Mayan Los Baños. Mayan, go ahead.
Yes, Regina, when asked about her assessment of PBBM's performance, now that he nears his first year in the office, Senator Lauren Legarda simply described President Bongbong Marcos as hardworking. According to Legarda, it is a good sign that Marcos reached out to various parts of the world that may have closed off to our country during the previous administration. But the senator hopes the discussions and promises made in the meetings between the president and other world leaders will be fulfilled. Regarding the question of whether Marcos should continue as the Agriculture Secretary, while Legarda respects that it is the President's prerogative, but she also hopes that someone who will truly focus on the agency will be appointed. Regina?
Thanks so much for that update, Mayan Los Baños. Now, some rice vendors are warning for a possible increase in the prices of rice again in the coming months, despite an excess in supply, according to the Agriculture Department. Now, according to the DA, there is abundant supply even beyond June. It just so happens that the quality of rice has improved, which is why it's being sold at a higher price. But vendors say otherwise. Some groups have also shifted the blame to imported rice. According to the Federation of Free Farmers, the country cannot rely on imported rice, especially since prices are still high in the world market following increased demand from other countries. They also suspect that traders are not lowering prices, especially when their purchase costs are high. For now, the DA is closely monitoring all of these as they remain focused on increasing production to reduce dependence on imports.
We have to see how many layers of traders are we dealing with and magkano po yung kanilang margins. But more importantly is how do we capacitate our farmers to take on the roles of the trader. Kasi it's not enough that we keep analyzing the cost structure. Dapat doon pumapasok yung ating intervention. The more we capacitate the farmers, we believe that the more our consumers will have access to cheaper agricultural commodities.
After the break, with the ever-growing popularity of the tampalpuke or flatfish, have you also wondered what the fish actually tastes like? Well, we will find out later on when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here in One News.
Congested prisons remain a problem here in the Philippines. And to give us a clearer picture of the situation, the Commission on Audit reported that more than 2/3 of the country's detention facilities are overcrowded. COA added that there are over 100,000 inmates that are squeezing themselves into jail cells with just enough capacity to hold 30,000 people. Jail officials said they are doing their best to address the situation, although in their defense, the congestion level in Philippine prisons has significantly gone down. So, exactly how is the BJMP planning to lessen the number of inmates in prisons? We have Marcel Halili to answer that for us. Go ahead, Marcel.
Sean, the BJ MP, says they're continuously putting up facilities. Aside from this, they're also coordinating with PDL's lawyers to try and shorten their sentences. These efforts include looking into their good conduct time allowances and reviewing if there are options to reduce the payment for bail. They're also looking to utilize community-based rehabilitation since around 70% of detained inmates are facing drug-related charges. Sean?
Thank you for that, Marcel.
President Bongbong Marcos has appointed Eli Remolona as the new governor of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Marcos made the appointment as the 6-year term of current BSP Governor Felipe Medalla ends on July 2. Remolona served as a professor of finance and director of central banking at the Asia School of Business in Kuala Lumpur, in collaboration with the MIT Sloan School of Management from 2019 to 2022. He was an economist at the Presidential Economic Staff and Development Management Staff under Alejandro Melchor, who was then Executive Secretary of the late President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. Throughout his career, Remolona worked as a consultant for the Asian Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank.
Gretch, ready ka na? Kasi...
Ako?
Oo.
Bakit ako?
Kasi
Tayo.
may nag-challenge sa'yo.
Sino?
Hindi ka na raw yung Tikim Princess. Si mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez na raw because she actually did a taste test of the tampalpuke for us. Let's watch this.
Sean, tampalpuke or flatfish were hard to find these days because they're either reserved or sold out. But earlier, we were lucky to buy some and we cooked 3 dishes, fried, adobo, and paksiw. Earlier in One Balita Pilipinas, I had fried and adobo versions of tampalpuke and winner parehas. So ngayon, titikman naman natin itong paksiw na tampalpuke. So maasim-asim siya, which is understandable kasi nga paksiw. And parehas lang naman siya sa ibang isda. Ang kaibahan lang, hindi masyadong matinik itong flatfish. Pero nonetheless, I recommend na tikman nyo itong tampalpuke and I have sent some at sana matikman nyo dyan. Sean?
Ito na. Nag-deliver si Pam.
Mukha siyang tilapia.
Look, keep the camera zooming.
Mukha siyang tilapia, pero guys,
Hindi, there's another...
pampano.
Ang sarap.
Hindi pampano. The other fish, the red one.
Maya-maya?
I don't know my
Or red
fish.
na pula.
Sorry.
Matambaka?
Kulang na lang dito sa usawan.
Ang sarap. Actually, for me, favorite. It's very fatty, very white, firm. Guys, ang sarap niya. Maraming salamat, Pam.
It's salty though.
Gutom na
Or
talaga ako.
is that just in the
Sa
seasoning?
timpla?
Sa
Really,
seasoning
this comes
yun.
from the Manila Bay, right? We reported that.
Baka this is Manila Bay season.
Natural salt yan.
Masarap.
Sea salt.
It's very good. It's very good.
Well, it's very good. Now we
Don't let the
understand.
name
Fool
deceive
you.
Yeah. What are we eating?
Tampalpuke. My first taste ever of tampalpuke.
Again, naturally seasoned by Manila Bay.
And that's it for the show tonight.
Have your dinner, guys. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in and good night.